Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talk Scottish Football. It's me, Ryan Fitzsimons, here to break down and discuss what was the spectacle of a game we just watched there. Denmark 2, Scotland 0. A game for the ages and one that all three of us, I'm sure, are eager to talk about. I'll come on to my guests in a moment. We were sitting there for a while. Well, I say I was sitting there for a while under the impression there was going to be four of us in tonight's stream. Turns out it's not. It's just the three of us. So we'll try and get through it as quickly as possible because I'm sure we don't want to be talking about that game for more than a prolonged period of time. And also, we'll try our best not to be as dull as what that game of football was, because that's the one word that I'd use to sum it up. I'm joined by, first of all, Mr. Adam Kennedy. Adam, how you doing there? I mean, for once, Hearts are playing well, so seeing Scotland play shite must not feel as bad.
I guess, I've never had both, performing particularly well kind of at the same time. So some days had to let me down, and ultimately, lo and behold, it's the national team yet again, Ryan. So yeah, not great, but it could be worse, mate. How are you?
Come on, I suppose I'm getting there, and that poses me to bring on the question to Kieran. Now, Kieran Auld is joining us as well today. First time he's been on TSF in a while. Welcome back, mate. Now, we last season had to sit through Celtic being absolutely abysmal, but we had the sort of ecstasy of Serbia. We had the ecstasy of the national team making a national tournament for the first time in their lifetime. It's now returned to normality. Celtic are not quite great, but they're semi-decent at the moment. But that is what we're getting from the national team. I take it that was a bit of a drag for you to watch this evening, Kieran.
It's probably one of the most brutal games of football I've had to watch, definitely this year. But I mean, that's saying something, because I've seen Celtic play a fair amount this year, absolutely shite. So I mean, it certainly wasn't a glamorous performance for Scotland there, but I mean, it's just back to business, isn't it?
Yeah, back to normal. It's the normality resumes, and listen, we'll break it all down. We'll talk about everything in the game itself. The person that I feel sorry for the most, I see a lot of people in the chat asking, look, there we go, Buick doesn't show, Buick ran. Everybody's asking for Buick. There's so many comments demanding David Buick. Now, I honestly reckon if he had to come on the show this week to talk about that, and Dunfermline would be a man down in TSF, so it's probably better off that he's not actually here. He's actually at work. You only got to catch the second half. If you want to hear his views, and make sure to go and follow him over on Twitter, and you can see all his views there tonight. I'm sure he'll be on the podcast sometime soon. So, Denmark 2, Scotland 0. Adam, the team came out tonight, and straight away there was doubts. There was a bit of pessimism, a little bit of anxiety towards what Scotland could do to the runners, semi-finalists of the Euros this summer. It wasn't great viewing when that team came out, and it really kind of set the tone straight away, didn't it?
Yes, it did, Ryan. Obviously, no natural right wing back, if you will, no right-sided player. Obviously, Che Adams pretty much up front on his own. I know that obviously there's kind of meant to be 3, ideally 4 in support of him. It certainly didn't transpire that way. Felt he was so isolated, and it's only really when Lyndon Dykes came on that began to change, dare I say. And even then, I'm using that term loosely because it's done at 2-0 down. So it's fine, cruising for the rest of what was well over an hour. But ultimately, we lost the game inside 92 seconds with the concession of 2 cheap goals.
Yeah, shout out, by the way, to James, and there was another donation, Matthew, as well, earlier. Thanks for the donations, lads. Really do appreciate it. If you do want to donate, you can use the super chat. But Adam, you can see 2 kind of cheap goals, and don't get me wrong, there was quality within those goals. I think it was a really good cross we've seen for the first one, the second one, a lovely wee pass into the box. But Kieran, Daniel Vass opens the score in the 14th minute. You're thinking to yourself, right, let's get the heads back up. Let's try and be a bit better. Then, 90 seconds later, Joachim Canny says that the second aim is up, making it 2-0, and it really just kind of that sort of minute just kind of showing that we were not up to the task. From the minute the ball was kicked, there was nothing in that game to suggest Scotland were good enough or to an extent ready enough to play a side of Denmark's quality.
I know it was some ball over the top for the first goal. I mean, you can't deny that, but I mean, to get caught out like that so quickly after the first goal, the heats go down, and you just allow such a cheap goal. I mean, it's just typical Scotland, isn't it? But when you watch them, and instead of picking themselves up and going after it again, the game just is done straight away. Because I don't think there's any Scotland fan out there who had any ounce of belief that game was going to get turned around. There was no sign. We looked bereft of ideas, and that just seems to be the case now. I mean, I feel like the feel-good factor has been absolutely ripped for the national team. I mean, it only lasted for a very brief spell. I mean, for the first time in our lifetimes, really. But I mean, no, it just feels, it's not a nice feeling going back to dreading watching these games, because even going into it, nobody had any real hope. I mean, but it's just, no, I really am lost for words when it comes to the national team most of the time, but especially the night.
A lot of people bringing up the thing tonight. Robertson at right wing back was the beginning of the end. Now we'll give a bit of sympathy to an extent at the fact that Scotland have been riddled with isolation, with COVID and all the rest of it. It's been a tough camp to be in at the moment. We only could take over a restricted amount of players for the game. But Adam, Robertson playing at right back today when you've got Kieran Tierney who's played at right back before, it feels like a lot of the same problems are coming up, and there does seem to be a certain, I don't want to say naive, but there does seem to be an issue there with Steve Clarke where he is making these sort of tactical decisions, and it goes over the course of a game. It comes into substitutions, it comes into players playing out of position, just different things. It makes you wonder sometimes what the thinking is, what's the process when he's making these calls.
And what our mindset is from the offset, Ryan, as well. David also mentioned to me about Ryan Fraser potentially playing out there as well. To me, that's far too offensive for Steve Clarke. I think we even said on the latest pod, it's not in Steve Clarke's makeup to lose in style. He'd much rather sit in and get beat rather than, we're too busy worrying about what the opposition are going to do to us rather than try and implement a genuine attacking game plan to try and win the game. So in that sense, I don't think we can really complain with the defeat. It's just the manner of the defeat, because it was so predictable, and ultimately it's too little too late. Yeah,
in the first half as well. I mean, you've got to look at the performance, and I know it's difficult. I know it really is. You're playing a tough side, but I honestly reckon, Kieran, that there's so many countries, and I put this point on Twitter. I was going to save it for the pod, but I had to put it up on Twitter just to say my piece. But I believe there's so many countries out there who are on par, if not worse than us, that can make these sacrifices to try and do something. You go 2-0 down, you've gave up all hope, right? Okay, but there's teams out there, I believe, that are worse than us that would still have gave that a go tonight and at least give you some entertainment value for what you're watching. Not just sit in and accept the defeat and play a football that sends you to sleep. I feel like we just sacrifice so much.
It's beyond belief, because I mean, even during the Euros as well, if you go back to then, like, it was just go for it, sort of. Like, you should have just went for it in some of the games, but there's no real ambition with the way we play. There's no real identity. It's just classic Steve Clarke. I mean, it got us to the Euros in the first place, but by the skin of our teeth, obviously. It certainly wasn't done in any form of style, but people were able to forgive that. And I feel like people are willing to just put any concerns they had on the back burner going into the Euros. Then the Euros were, I mean, they're a good laugh, put it that way. but I mean, it was a good trip away to London and that. But I mean, realistically, a couple of the games games that we could have got a result in, especially the Czech Republic game, we got embarrassed with. What was that back then? But I mean, now we're in games like this where we need to try and go for it. I mean,
it's as though he got a free pass, wasn't it? It's got us there, so that's the mentality that we're just happy to be there.
That's what I mean. That's got a defeatist attitude now, because we're going into a game like it's away to Denmark. It is he's probably thinking this is a free hit, as you said. He's not going out with. I think we're going out with any belief that we're going to go and get a result. I didn't get that impression whatsoever tonight.
No, not at all. It was the last thing I expected. I think there's times in the past, and maybe at club football you get as well, you go down 1-0 to a good team and you still kind of have your head up and go, right, well, if we can find our way into this. But with Scotland straight away, it's not going to happen. With Steve Clarke in charge, down 1-0, he's going to sit him back further probably. There was a lot of issues in that first half. And before we come in to talk about what was a slightly better second half, I still don't think it was great, but a slightly better second half. The first half was worrying for a number of reasons. I'm seeing a lot of people giving Kieran Tierney a lot of stick, which I think is fair. I think he was poor tonight. A lot of the mistakes he's been making at Arsenal were translated over to his Scotland performance tonight. There was other players who simply weren't good enough, but even players and we spoke about this in the chat, Adam, at half time, I didn't think Billy Gilmore looked great, and that's a real worry. Not worry for Billy Gilmore. He's a cracking player, and he'll go on to be one of Scotland's best players I think we'll ever see with the way he's going. But Steve Clarke is not going to get the best out of these younger talents. He's not going to get the best of Billy Gilmore. That's not how I want to see his introduction to the national team. I want to see him playing against Denmark and going, wow, that's a bright light. But today, in that first half especially, the light was nothing but dim.
No, I mean, it hardly bodes well for the future, does it?
No.
And even sort of the small, simple passes that you'd expect a player of Billy Gilmore's calibre to make. I couldn't tell you a successful pass in that first half. And I know that obviously later on it transpired that he was probably one of Scotland's better players in the second half. But what does it matter? Because we're already 2-0 down. It's too late. Like, it was enough of a daunting task to enter it at 0-0. Never mind when you've just gone 2-0 down to, as you rightly said, semi-finalists at the last European Championships. In a game that, let's be frank, Scotland had to get something if we're to stand any chance of qualifying for the World Cup. So I get what you mean. To me, I think there's still that little bit of leeway because he's not one of the more experienced players within the group. He probably is the least experienced. Obviously, I know that Lewis Ferguson gets his debut again tonight, but what's the point in that as well? Why not just give him the Moldova game, like the full 90 minutes? What's the point in this cameo? Is it just, are we looking at it thinking we've got to play our strongest team from Moldova now, so he probably won't feature then, so we'll just give him his debut? It doesn't bode well, and it doesn't encourage me for, let's face it, a promising group of youngsters that I genuinely believe that we have.
Yeah, because it's a group of youngsters I think we all want to believe in. And to be honest, I know there's people who still want to back Clark, and he's done a job in getting us to that national tournament, but I do not have trust in him being the right guy to get the best out of these younger talents. I don't know if you two would agree with that, but I just don't have that trust that I would maybe have with someone else at the moment. We will go into the second half because things did get a little bit better in the second half. I still think it was a dross game of football, Kieran, but there was a little bit more ambition. Lyndon Dykes came onto the park. He seemed to have that effect that we expected, hitting the balls up the park and getting a couple of chances out the game. McGregor, I think, had a shot saved. There was somebody, Ryan Fraser as well, I believe, had a shot saved too. Ultimately, Kieran, yeah, we can say that it's better, but is it still slightly annoying that as a team with a great bunch of players, we're relying on hitting the ball up long to Lyndon Dykes? I know it's difficult once again against Denmark, and I will have that sort of, I'll give that sort of excuse for a moment, but at the same time, it's not great viewing, and it did get better, but it didn't take much to get better, did it?
No, I mean, the bar was on the floor for the first half. So, I mean, there wasn't, I don't know, we came out and we had a chance on goal pretty early on. You thought maybe we might try and sneak a wee goal and try and get back into this. But as you said, when Dykes come on, he's a focal point for the attack. But as you said, it's completely changing the way we need to play. We're having to lump the balls up the park. And while it might work in most cases, when we're playing against better opposition, I mean, we've not got any delusions about how good we are. We don't think we're world beaters as much as I went on about it a bit during the summer, getting a wee bit ahead of ourselves. But I mean, I don't know. It's just we don't think, well, as I say, we don't think we're world beaters. We've got good players, but a good crop of attacking young players coming through that I don't think Clark will get the best out of. I agree with you on that. It's just his style of football. I think I've seen a few people in the comments say it, and I think it smothers any hope of actually having a bit of ambition. But I mean, as I said, we don't have any delusions about how grandeur, how well Scotland's going to perform. But it's the fact that we're suffocating any hope actually doing well just to fit this style of play and think this is the only way we can play against these teams, and it's not working out.
No, it's not at all. Adam, we did make changes the second half as well by bringing on Lewis Ferguson, be it the 91st minute. We brought on Ryan Christie. We brought on David Turnbull. Once again, for me, and I don't know if you will agree, it just seemed too late. I feel like if you had any sort of hope of getting something, which I think we've all just agreed that he gave up all that hope. I don't know, there's got to be another way to go about it, I think, than saving the subs for certain points of the game. They can certainly have a better impact, you'd imagine. These are guys that are playing at a very good level. David Turnbull, Ryan Christie's just got to move to Bournemouth.
He's boyhood heroes, you know.
The boyhood heroes, Bournemouth, you know what I mean? David Turnbull, of course, Lewis Ferguson, who's been playing well as well. These are guys that can have a better impact to the game. And I feel like we're just, once again, getting the tactical side of it. And a few months ago, I was sitting there and I was giving, you know what, going into the Euros, I was saying Steve Clark's strengths is, you know, his tactics. I think he'll be able to try and get us something. But as of late, and we've seen it at the Euros, we constantly complained about it at the Euros. He's not making subs at the right times. He's not making changes at the right times. It just, what the word that Kieran used, it suffocates the hope.
It does. It really does. I think for me, the most alarming thing within that is the fact that Ryan Christie's been a solid performer for Scotland under Steve Clark. And yet, when I was looking at the first half, I mean, I don't even think we had a shot at goal. So how can there not be, if we're playing a quintet in midfield, how can there not be a link between that 5 and Che Adams effectively playing as that lone striker? And again, like Kieran says, Lyndon Dykes, we're feeding long balls up to him in desperation because it's too little too late. Look at the size of like Simon Kjær at centre-half. It's food and drink feeding it up long to him all night. And they coped with any sort of, I don't even want to say threat from Dykes, because it wasn't. It was just so routine. And if that's the desperation that we're resorting to, we just as well forget it.
See, the thing that it's getting to me, but it's like, I feel like it reminds me so much of us last season, where we seem to be hoping for just one moment of individual brilliance to try and get us in the game, instead of having a clear plan that's actually going to challenge the opposition. We're just hoping for, the closest chances we had for ages tonight was just a couple of poor long shots outside the box.
That's never all we were limited to, mate, wasn't
it? You can put that down to the quality of the opposition, but the reality is that seems to be the game plan with a lot of managers that don't really have too clear a tactical know-how in terms of these games, other than sit in and hope we don't get hammered. So I don't know. I just feel like we're overly reliant on things like that. And it just reminds me of us last season.
I know, it's great. That's what you want to be reminded of. Just as it's getting out of memories, it's getting brought back via the international team. Just what you like to see. Ultimately, the game did finish up 2-0. Before we talk about the kind of moving on aspect of this into the next game, because we have been on for nearly 20 minutes now, so there's not much else to go through. Before we move on, anything that you would like to throw out about the 90 minutes itself, anything that happened on the pitch tonight, any final thoughts that you would like to get across?
I think I'd rather forget it, Ryan.
Blunt as always. I like it. That's as simple as it has to be. Adam, I just seen a slight shake of the head from you. You're finished. You've said your part.
That was absolutely rank rotten. I've seen many a pish game of football in my life, but that was up there.
Trust me, I've had my fill. That was it. It definitely was up there. It really was. It now leaves the group looking as follows. Denmark sit top with 4 wins out of 4. They're pretty much there. They'll be in Qatar. They'll be at the World Cup. I don't think Israel or Austria are going to be in a position to maybe challenge that top spot. It is all about second place now, and if Scotland are good enough to challenge for that second place spot, Scotland's games have draw, win, and lose. That, to me, lads, along with not one win at the major tournament, and just overall being piss poor over the best part of a year, is enough to suggest for me it's time for change at Scotland. It really is to me. I'm getting sick and tired. I was trying to hold on. I was a bit behind Buick and getting right on the we need change wagon, but Kieran, we are now sitting in the group with 5 points. Israel and Austria 2 clear, hoping for a bit of a miracle, Kieran. It just makes this whole contract situation even more baffling to me.
When I seen it announced, I was pretty surprised, to be honest with you. I didn't really have too many strong opinions on Clark, to be honest, but with performances like the night, it really makes you wonder why it was given like the contract, because I don't know. I don't like going and slag off the guy that got us to the tournament and that. But how long do you let it slide though? Because I feel like I've seen Beans in the comments saying that it's insanity to compare the seasons, but I'm seeing so many likenesses here. It's scary. We've got him on Twitter arguing with people saying people are saying he's using excuses that Lennon got last season, and I think that's pretty much spot on. And I think a lot of people are going to have the wool pulled over their eyes for a long time if we're living off Steve Clarke's glory of getting us to Euros by the skin of our teeth. Because everybody was happy to get there, but nobody wanted to talk about how we got there. We were just happy to be there. But now, if you get to a certain level, are we just happy to accept that at least we got there? Or do you want to try and build on it a wee bit? It's if you want to accept mediocrity, fair enough. Or if you want to try and nurture a group of talent that's coming through with a better manager, then I think that's probably the better option. But I'm no delusional in the sense that Scotland don't really have the pulling factor, as he said, to maybe bring in a brilliant manager. So I don't know where we stand, but I don't think Clark is the answer.
Yeah, it makes it a big decision, doesn't it, Adam? I mean, obviously the decision has been made. There's going to be no change. I think it would take a drastic turn and an embarrassing turn of events to see Steve Clarke put out and someone else come in as manager. But Kira is pretty spot on there. I was saying that it is a difficult situation. Who do you get now? I believe there's hundreds of managers out there that if Scotland had any ounce of ambition and change, they could go and try and give the job. I think it's just looking beyond the regular crop of names. But it is difficult. You can't deny that if it was the case. But it's something that ultimately we don't need to worry about because they're pretty set in having them here till 2024, Adam.
No, you're right, mate. And I think this is the big bugbear that those that are wanting Steve Clarke out have, and that there's no real competitive replacement. I think those that want Steve Clarke to remain are just sentimental and are desperate to cling on to the memories of, that night in Serbia. But ultimately, that's the only one, because the tournament, as we've discussed, we were pish. So what does it really matter? I think in terms of a successor, like I said on the pod, there's nobody that jumps out at me instantly. And that's the worrying thing. But ultimately, it's not all that worrying because, like you've rightly said, he's going nowhere. And he'll see what, the next Euros, should we even make it? It's getting to the stage now where I'm thinking, would a bad result against Moldova actually benefit us? Would then kind of Scotland directors sort of take notice of that? I really don't know, because ultimately this campaign looks as though it's done anyway. So what does it matter if we scud Moldova like we're expected to? Surely then we'd be willing to kind of take the hit if it meant change. I don't know, and it's a conflict of interest, but that's honestly how I feel. I can't put my finger on it at the minute.
It's just speaking the truth. It's like there's no point in dressing it up to be something it's not, or trying to act like everything's okay. If it's how a Scotland fan's feeling, it's how a Scotland fan's feeling. I think that one thing that we're very honest about as a footballing nation is our kind of feelings towards things. Now, people can try and be naive at times, but look, if we want change, we want change, and that's been displayed right now by, well, online anyway, a vast majority of Scotland supporters. Before we do end, Steve Clarke is now taking charge. Was that his 24th or 25th game there as Scotland manager? I think it was one of the two. I think it might have been his 25th game. We've won 9. Well, it says, according to the stats in front of me, I don't know if it's been updated. 24 games, 9 wins, 7 draws, and 8 losses. A win percentage of 37.5%, which of course includes getting to the European Championships. In that 25-ish games, how many good performances can you pick out? Genuinely. How many good performances can you pick out?
The only reason we get into the tournament is because of the new pathway created to get in, and then he still managed to fuck up the Nations League this time run, which we were in a very good position for.
And us falling into that due to previous managers as well. It's not as though, exactly. he inherited that position and the squad. So, I don't know, man.
I mean,
a handful. I think
it's just. I think we'd be a bit naive. Like, I know it's gone back a wee bit talking about the whole manager situation, but I think we'd be a bit naive to. I know we've got the thingy. We don't know who we'd bring in, but as I said, here's another comparison to last season. It's not their jobs as fans to decide who's going to be. There's people employed to do that very job, and these people now need to start thinking outside the box. Like, I mean, people in the comments are saying it, and I agree with them. Celtic went outside the box with Postecoglou. Somebody you've not heard it, but when you think of a Scotland manager, there's only ever 4 or 5 names that it could, in fans' minds, possibly be. Is this now the time?
Alec McLeish,
That's what I mean. But is this now the time in which you go for an outside the box option? And because I feel like we've just got this comfort blanket of these somewhat big names for the Scotland job. They're never really big names, but it's names that we all know and we're familiar with. But I mean, it's a pure sort of comfort blanket for people, and it just allows us to be naive and think that we can only play a certain way and we're only Scotland. But I mean, that just lacks ambition. And as I said earlier, if you want to try and build on like the feeling, like the feel good factor this summer, I feel we're just going backwards with this now. Whereas they've got a chance to build on it for a crop of players coming through that actually looks quite exciting, or they can just do what happened with every other generation of players and just let it go by the wayside.
Which is most likely the way it's going to go. Scotland have 2 more games, lads, before we end up here tonight. They have 2 more games in this international break. We take on Moldova at Hampden on Saturday. We then head to Austria on Tuesday night. after that tonight, Adam, how are you feeling going into those games? I know you've touched on the fact that maybe that conflict of interest makes Saturday a bit more of a sort of, I don't know, interesting watch, to say the least. But, you know, it's a game now where Steve Clarke really needs to get the big guns out, and we need to give us a good, not just a win. You're looking for a really good performance if you're wanting Clarke to prove himself.
And this is why we'll probably beat Moldova on Saturday and then get back off Austria, you know, on a Tuesday after. Now it's a case of wondering, you know, we even said it, like the Moldova fixture was the most guaranteed out of the three. And if we don't beat Moldova at home, then we don't deserve to be at a major tournament. And you could argue Steve Clarke doesn't deserve to keep his job. So, I don't know. We'll beat Moldova. I'm fully convinced. We'll beat Moldova. People get, you know, optimistic again, to then be let down by a defeat to Austria. And then we'll be scratching our heads basically in the exact same predicament that we are currently right now.
And Kieran, I was going to come to you for that, just to end this off. Austria, the game after that. We'll be talking about it on the podcast and such. There'll be more videos, more previews and such this week. But we then take on Austria side, who were in the last 16 of the European Championships. They were beaten by the team who went on to win it, Italy. And to tell you, they gave Italy a good task. They gave them a good game. And, well, they took it all the way to extra time. That's where they lost. So you're looking at an Austria side that's probably going to whip Scotland around.
I know Austria certainly are no mugs, and it's a fixture that would the thought it would drive you to the drink, because I'm really not looking forward to it again. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. You're going into these games and you're dreading the thought of it, because performances like the night just show you what Scotland are capable of, and at the moment it's not very much. I mean, as Adam said, I think we'll get the result on Saturday, because, I mean, if we don't, then God help us all. But and just being blunt there, but. And I don't know, it's hard to feel any optimism towards the Scotland national team now. And if you're, I mean, before the Euros, it's night and day, but like the life, everybody been like so buzzing about the national team. Obviously, it was at a tournament, but the life's been sucked right out of it already.
It's mad, because listen, I put a tweet right up at the start of the game tonight, and the difference going into this game and going into the Croatia game. We went into the Croatia game as the biggest international match in our lifetimes. We were buzzing. We actually thought that going into it, there was a chance we could get the magic and beat Croatia that night to go through to the last 16. Little less said the better about what happened that night. But you then go into that game tonight, and honestly, I just felt like I couldn't care less. And that's now the danger of, once again, alienating fans. We had that opportunity, and I know we were unlucky with COVID striking and we really couldn't get to the grounds, but there seems like there was a genuine point where everybody wanted to go to Hampden. Everybody wanted to watch a Scotland game, but now we're getting to the point that who wants to go and watch us play Moldova on Saturday? That is the genuine question. That's what the situation we find ourselves in. What's
the pricing for a ticket on Saturday? Because if you're paying that, you are off your rocker.
£20, I believe. I think it's £20 for adult prices is £20, I'm sure, for the weekend. Aye.
Wouldn't even pay that.
Wouldn't pay it. No, not a chance. Wouldn't pay it. Unpatriotic, you could say, but justified in these times. That'll do us anyway. Look, we've been going for about half an hour now, so we'll save our ranting for the next game. Who knows? Maybe after the Moldova game, we might need to come on and rant even more. It could be that way. We just never know. Adam, thanks very much for joining me, mate. Kieran as well. An absolute pleasure as always to have you shooting from the hip. We will be back throughout the week numerous times to talk about this. So it might be me, it might be David, it might be Div, who knows. But that'll do us for now. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. We do appreciate your involvement in the show, and we'll see you all next time.